I froze at the top of the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. The hushed voices from the kitchen below carried up to me, clear as day in the quiet house. Rick, you can't hide Jordan from Casey forever. What if she finds out? My mother-in-law Esther's voice was sharp, even in a whisper. She won't, Rick replied, his tone dismissive. Casey's too busy playing housemaid to notice. I gripped the banister, my knuckles turning white. 15 years of marriage, and this is what it had come to? My husband discussing his affair with his mother in our kitchen, while I eavesdropped like some pathetic spy in my own home. You're playing with fire, Esther warned. Casey may be a doormat, but even doormats have their limits. I bit my lip, fighting back tears. A doormat, is that all I was to them? Mom, drop it, Rick snapped. I've got this under control. Casey's not going anywhere. The certainty in his voice made my blood boil. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. They were right about one thing. I wasn't going anywhere, at least not yet. I crept back to our bedroom, my mind racing. How long had this been going on? How could I have been so blind? The next morning, I plastered on a smile as I made breakfast. Rick stumbled into the kitchen, bleary-eyed and hungover. Morning, honey? I chirped, setting a plate of eggs in front of him. Sleep well? He grunted, not meeting my eyes. Fine, thanks. I turned to the stove, my back to him. So, how's work been? Any interesting projects? Same old, he muttered. I spun around, fixing him with a steady gaze. Really? No one new on your team? No. Jordan, maybe? Rick's fork clattered to his plate. He stared at me, his face pale. What? Jordan, I repeated, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. Your coworker, the one you're sleeping with. Casey, I held up a hand, silencing him. Save it, Rick. I heard you and your mother last night. He slumped in his chair, running a hand through his hair. It's not what you think. I laughed, a harsh sound that surprised even me. Really, because I think it's exactly what I think. How long? Rick's silence was all the answer I needed. Get out, I said quietly. He looked up, startled. What? I said, get out. Go to work, go to Jordan. I don't care. Just get out of my sight. Rick stood, his chair scraping against the floor. Casey, we need to talk about this. Oh, now you want to talk? I spat. After 15 years of treating me like your personal maid? After moving us in with your parents so I could take care of your father? After letting your mother treat me like dirt? Now you want to talk? Mom? Lily's voice came from the doorway. Our 13-year-old daughter stood there, her eyes wide with concern. What's going on? I took a deep breath, forcing a smile. Nothing, sweetheart. Your dad was just leaving for work. Rick hesitated, looking between me and Lily. Finally, he grabbed his briefcase and headed for the door. We'll discuss this later, he muttered. As soon as the door closed behind him, Lily rushed to my side. Mom, are you okay? I heard yelling. I pulled her into a hug, fighting back tears. I'm okay, honey, but things are going to be changing around here. What do you mean? I pulled back, looking into her eyes. Your dad? He's done something very wrong, and I'm not sure I can forgive him. Lily's face hardened. Is this about the woman from his office? The one he's always texting? I blinked, stunned. You knew. She shrugged, looking away. I saw some messages on his phone. I didn't want to say anything. I hugged her again, tighter this time. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry you had to deal with that alone. What are we going to do? Lily whispered. I straightened up, a newfound determination coursing through me. We're going to take care of ourselves, that's what. No more being doormats. As if on cue, Esther's voice rang out from upstairs. Casey, where's my breakfast? I exchanged a look with Lily, seeing my own resolve mirrored in her eyes. Coming, Esther, I called back. But as I reached for another plate, I knew things would never be the same. The life I'd known was over. It was time to start planning for a new one where I called the shots. I stood at the kitchen sink, scrubbing dishes with more force than necessary. 15 years of marriage, and for what? To be treated like a servant in my own home? Casey! Esther's shrill voice pierced through my thoughts. Where's my afternoon tea? I gritted my teeth, setting down the sponge. Coming, Esther. As I prepared her tea, my mind wandered to the day Rick and I moved in. We were newlyweds, full of hope and love. Rick's father, Carl, had just been diagnosed with Parkinson's, and we agreed to help care for him. It seemed like the right thing to do. What's taking so long? Esther demanded as I entered the living room. I plastered on a smile. Here you are, Esther, just the way you like it. She snatched the cup, not even bothering to look at me. It's probably cold by now. I bit my tongue, remembering how different things were when Carl was alive. He'd always been kind, always grateful for my help. But after he passed 5 years ago, everything changed. Esther became more demanding, more critical. And Rick? He retreated into his work, leaving me to deal with his mother alone. The front door slammed, and Rick's voice called out, "I'm home!" My heart raced. We hadn't spoken since our confrontation this morning. I steeled myself and walked to the foyer. Rick stood there looking sheepish. "Casey, can we talk?" I crossed my arms. "About what, Rick? About how you've been cheating on me? Or about how you and your mother talk about me behind my back?" He winced. "Look, I know I messed up, but we can work through this, for the kids if nothing else." The mention of our children made my resolve waver. But then I remembered Lily's face this morning, the hurt in her eyes when she admitted she knew about her father's affair. The kids deserve better than this, Rick. We all do. He stepped closer, reaching for my hand. "I'll do better, I promise. Just give me another chance." For a moment I almost believed him, but then Esther's voice rang out again. "Rick, is that you? Come in here and fix this remote. Your wife is useless with technology." Rick's face fell, but he didn't contradict his mother. He just gave me an apologetic shrug and headed towards the living room. I watched him go, a familiar ache settling in my chest. How many times had I tried to talk to him about his mother's behavior? How many times had he dismissed my concerns? Later that night, after putting Max to bed, I found Lily in her room, hunched over her desk. "Hey, sweetie, what are you working on?" She looked up, her eyes shining with excitement. "Remember that art contest you told me about? I'm entering!" I smiled, genuine joy breaking through my melancholy. "That's wonderful, Lily. Can I see?" She hesitated, then nodded, sliding her sketchbook towards me. I gasped as I took in the intricate design. It was a tree, its branches forming the silhouettes of 3 figures, a woman and 2 children. "It's us," Lily explained softly. "You, me, and Max, standing strong together." Tears pricked my eyes as I hugged her tight. "It's beautiful, honey. You're so talented." As I held my daughter, a sense of clarity washed over me. I couldn't keep living like this, not just for my sake, but for my children's. They deserved to grow up in a home filled with love and respect, not tension and resentment. I pulled back, looking into Lily's eyes. "Sweetheart, there's something I need to tell you. Things are going to be changing around here soon." Lily's expression grew serious. "Are we leaving?" Her perceptiveness startled me. "How did you know?" She shrugged. "I've seen how unhappy you are, Mom, and after this morning, I just figured something had to give." I nodded, swallowing hard. "You're right. We can't stay here anymore. But I promise you, no matter what happens, we'll face it together. You, me, and Max." Lily squeezed my hand, just like in my drawing. As I left her room, I felt a newfound determination. Tomorrow, I'd start making plans. It was time to reclaim my life, for myself and for my children. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, I felt hope blooming in my chest. The next morning, I woke with a renewed sense of purpose. While Rick was in the shower, I slipped into his office and logged onto his computer. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I searched for apartment listings and job opportunities. A notification popped up on Rick's screen, a new email from Jordan. My stomach churned, but I clicked it open. "Can't wait to see you tonight? Same place, same time?" I quickly closed the email, my resolve strengthening. There was no going back now. As I made breakfast, my phone buzzed, an unknown number. Curious, I answered. "Casey?" "It's Tim Cooper from college. Remember me?" My heart skipped a beat. Tim had been my closest friend in art school, always encouraging my work. "Tim, of course I remember. It's been ages. I saw some of your designs online," he said. "You're still incredibly talented, Casey. What happened to chasing your dreams?" I glanced around the kitchen, lowering my voice. "Life happened, but maybe it's time for a change." "Well, I've got a freelance project that could use your touch. Interested?" Before I could answer, Esther's voice rang out. "Casey, who are you talking to? Breakfast isn't going to make itself." I gritted my teeth. "Tim, I'll call you back. I'm definitely interested." After a hectic morning of catering to Esther's demands and getting the kids off to school, I finally found a moment to slip away. I called Tim back, my heart racing with excitement. "Tell me more about this project," I said, closing my bedroom door. Tim's enthusiasm was contagious. It's a rebranding for a local women's shelter. They need a fresh look, something empowering and hopeful. Your style would be perfect. As Tim outlined the details, I felt a spark I hadn't experienced in years. This was more than just a job. It was a lifeline. I'm in, I said, surprising myself with my confidence. When can I start? How about we meet for coffee tomorrow to discuss the details? Just then, I heard the front door open. Rick was home early. I've got to go, I whispered. Text me the time and place. I'll be there. I hung up just as Rick appeared in the doorway. Who were you talking to? Wrong number, I lied smoothly. How was work? Rick shrugged, not meeting my eyes. Fine. Listen, I've got a late meeting tonight. Don't wait up. My blood boiled. A late meeting with Jordan, no doubt. But I forced a smile. Of course. Have a good time. As soon as Rick left, I threw myself into research. I looked up divorce lawyers, custody arrangements, and how to secure my finances. With each piece of information, I felt more empowered. That evening, after putting the kids to bed, I sat at my old drafting table. Dust had gathered on the surface, a testament to how long it had been since I'd allowed myself to create. I pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and began to sketch. Hours flew by as I lost myself in the work. When I finally looked up, it was past midnight. The house was silent, Rick still not home. I studied my designs, a sense of pride swelling in my chest. They were good, really good. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. A car door slammed outside. Rick was home. I quickly gathered my sketches, hiding them in a drawer. As I climbed into bed, pretending to be asleep, a realization hit me. I didn't need Rick or Esther's approval. I had talent, drive, and most importantly, a way out. Tomorrow, I'd meet Tim and take the first step towards my new life. But for now, I closed my eyes, a small smile playing on my lips. The Casey they thought they knew, the doormat, the silent sufferer, was gone. In her place was a woman ready to reclaim her life, one sketch at a time. Little did I know, the path ahead would be far more challenging and rewarding than I could have ever imagined. The next few days were a whirlwind of secret preparations and stolen moments. I'd set up a new bank account, started packing essentials when no one was home, and even found a small apartment for rent across town. But telling the kids about our impending departure weighed heavily on my mind. One afternoon, while Rick was at work and Esther was at her book club, I sat Lily and Max down in the living room. Kids, we need to talk about something important, I began, my heart racing. Lily's eyes narrowed. Is this about Dad's affair? I nodded, surprised by her perceptiveness. Yes, partly, but it's more than that. We're going to be moving out soon. Max's lower lip trembled. But why, Mommy? Don't you love Daddy anymore? I pulled him close, fighting back tears. Oh, sweetie, I'll always love your dad in some way, but sometimes adults need to make hard choices to be happy and safe. Lily took my hand. I think it's the right thing to do, Mom. We can't stay here with Grandma being so mean to you all the time. Her maturity both warmed and broke my heart. I hugged them both tightly, grateful for their understanding. That evening, as we sat down for dinner, the tension in the air was palpable. Rick barely looked at me, while Esther's eyes bored into me with suspicion. So, Casey? Esther began, her voice dripping with disdain. I hear you've been working on some little project? Playing with your doodles again? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Actually, Esther, I've taken on a freelance job. It's a rebranding project for a women's shelter. Rick's head snapped up, surprise evident on his face. Esther, however, scoffed. Playing with your little doodles won't pay the bills, Casey. Rick deserves better. The room fell silent. I could feel Lily and Max's eyes on me, waiting to see how I'd respond. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I stood up slowly, placing my napkin on the table. I'm more than these little doodles, Esther. Watch me prove it. Rick finally spoke up. Casey, sit down. You're embarrassing yourself. I turned to him, my voice steady. No, Rick, I'm done sitting down. I'm done being silent, and I'm done letting you and your mother treat me like I'm worthless. Esther gasped, her face turning red. How dare you speak to us like that, after everything we've done for you? I laughed, a harsh sound that surprised even me. Everything you've done for me? You mean treating me like a servant? Belittling my dreams? Turning a blind eye while your son cheats on me? Rick paled. Casey, that's enough. But I was on a roll. No, it's not enough. It's just the beginning. Kids, go pack your bags. We're leaving. Chaos erupted. Esther started shrieking. Rick tried to grab my arm, but Lily and Max sprang into action, running upstairs to their rooms. As I turned to follow them, Rick caught my wrist. "You can't do this, Casey. You have nowhere to go." I yanked my arm free, meeting his gaze. "That's where you're wrong, Rick. I have everywhere to go, and for the first time in years, I'm choosing myself." I raced upstairs, helping the kids gather their things. My hands shook as I threw clothes into suitcases, listening to Rick and Esther's angry voices below. Just as we were about to leave, I remembered my sketchbook. I couldn't leave without it. I dashed into our bedroom, rummaging through drawers. That's when I saw it. A small velvet box, hidden beneath Rick's socks. My curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. Inside was a stunning diamond necklace. My heart sank as I realized it wasn't for me. It was for Jordan. Footsteps thundered up the stairs. I snapped the box shut, grabbed my sketchbook, and ran out just as Rick burst into the room. "Casey, wait!" But I was already halfway down the stairs, kids in tow, heading for the door. As we piled into the car, I caught a glimpse of Rick and Esther in the doorway, their faces a mix of anger and disbelief. I started the engine, my resolve stronger than ever. There was no turning back now. Our new life was waiting, and I was ready to embrace it, challenges and all. The morning of our departure arrived with a surreal calm. I woke before dawn, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. This was it, the day everything would change. I crept downstairs, careful not to wake Rick or Esther. In the dim kitchen light, I pulled out a sheet of paper and began to write. "Rick, by the time you read this, the children and I will be gone. I heard everything that night. About Jordan, about your affair, about how little you think of me. You betrayed my trust and underestimated my strength. Our children and I deserve better, and we're leaving to find that better life. I've spent 15 years sacrificing my dreams for this family. No more. I'm taking back my life, my career, and my self-respect. Don't try to find us. Don't try to manipulate the kids. It's over. Casey." I folded the letter and left it on the kitchen table. As I turned to leave, I caught sight of a framed photo on the wall, our wedding day. We looked so young, so full of hope. I touched the glass, a lump forming in my throat. How had we ended up here? A floorboard creaked upstairs, jolting me back to reality. I hurried to wake Lily and Max, helping them dress and gather their final belongings. We moved like ghosts through the house, our whispers and shuffling feet the only sounds in the pre-dawn quiet. As we loaded the car, I felt a presence behind me. I turned to find Esther standing on the porch, her face a mask of fury. "Where do you think you're going?" she hissed. I straightened my spine, meeting her gaze. "Away from here. Away from you and Rick and all the pain you've caused." She laughed, a cruel sound. "You'll never make it on your own. You're nothing without this family." Her words, intended to wound, only strengthened my resolve. "Watch me," I said, climbing into the driver's seat. As we pulled away, I saw Rick burst out of the house, still in his pajamas. He ran after the car, shouting my name. In the rearview mirror, I watched him grow smaller and smaller until he disappeared from view. We drove in silence for a while, the weight of what we'd done settling over us. Then Max's small voice piped up from the back seat. "Mommy, where are we going?" I smiled at him in the mirror. "To our new home, sweetie. To our new life." Lily reached forward and squeezed my shoulder. "We're proud of you, Mom." Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them away. I needed to stay strong for them. We arrived at the small apartment I'd rented across town. It wasn't much, 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, and a living room that would double as my workspace. But it was ours. As we unpacked, my phone buzzed incessantly with calls and messages from Rick. I ignored them all. That evening, exhausted but exhilarated, I sat on our second-hand couch, watching Lily and Max explore their new rooms. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Tim. "Hey, superstar, how'd it go?" I took a deep breath. "We did it. We're out." "That's amazing, Casey. I'm so proud of you. Listen, I've got some news about the project. The client loved your initial designs. They want to meet with you tomorrow to discuss expanding the scope." My heart leapt. This was it. My chance to prove Esther wrong, to show Rick what he'd underestimated all these years. "I'll be there," I said, a fierce determination in my voice. As I hung up, a notification popped up on my phone, an email from Rick's work account, probably sent by mistake. The subject line made my blood run cold. Custody, battle, strategy. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a detailed plan to fight for full custody of the kids, painting me as an unstable, unfit mother. I sank to the floor, the phone clattering beside me. Just when I thought we were free, just when I dared to hope for a better future, Rick was plotting to take away the very reason I'd found the strength to leave. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't even just about the kids. This was war, and I'd be damned if I didn't fight with everything I had. I picked up the phone, my fingers flying across the screen. "Tim, I need a favor. Can you recommend a good lawyer?" The battle for our future had only just begun. The days following our departure were a whirlwind of activity. Between setting up our new home, preparing for my meeting with the women's shelter client, and consulting with the lawyer Tim recommended, I barely had time to breathe. But the constant motion kept me from dwelling on the enormity of what I'd done. That is, until Rick showed up at our door. I was in the middle of a video call with my new client when the pounding started. Lily, who had been reading on the couch, jumped up with wide eyes. "Mom," she whispered, "it's Dad." My heart raced, but I kept my voice steady as I addressed my client. "I'm so sorry, but I need to step away for a moment. Family emergency." I muted the call and turned to Lily. "Take Max to your room and lock the door. Don't come out until I say it's okay." As soon as the kids were safely out of sight, I opened the door. Rick burst in, his face a storm of emotions. "Casey, please," he pleaded. "We can work this out." I stood my ground, my voice ice cold. "Your actions spoke louder than your words, Rick. Our children and I are moving on." He ran his hands through his hair, frustration evident. "You can't just take my kids away from me. I'll fight you on this, Casey. I swear I will." "I know about your custody battle strategy," I shot back. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Rick's face paled. "How did you? It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're trying to paint me as an unfit mother when you're the one who betrayed this family." He stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. "You have no idea what you're up against, Casey. My mother has connections. We'll bury you in legal fees. You'll lose everything." For a moment, fear gripped me. But then I thought of Lily and Max, of the life I was fighting to build for us. I straightened my spine and met Rick's gaze. "Get out," I said, my voice steady, "and don't come back unless it's through our lawyers." As I closed the door on Rick's stunned face, I heard a commotion from the hallway. Esther's shrill voice carried through the thin walls. "Richard, did you get them? Are they coming home?" I pressed my ear to the door, listening intently. "No, Mom." Rick sighed. "She's not budging. We need to regroup." "This is ridiculous," Esther screeched. "Who's going to take care of the house, cook my meals? That ungrateful little—" Their voices faded as they moved down the hallway. I slumped against the door, my heart pounding. The reality of what I was up against hit me full force. Rick and Esther weren't just fighting for the kids. They were fighting to maintain their comfortable life, with me as their personal servant. A gentle knock on the bedroom door jolted me back to the present. "Mom?" Lily called. "Is it safe to come out?" I took a deep breath, composing myself. "Yes, sweetie. Everything's okay now." As Lily and Max emerged, I was struck by the concern in their young faces. They'd been through so much already. How could I protect them from what was coming? My laptop chimed, reminding me of the interrupted call. With shaking hands, I unmuted myself. "I'm so sorry for the interruption. Where were we?" The client's face filled the screen, her expression kind. "Casey, is everything all right? You look a bit shaken." I opened my mouth to assure her I was fine, but to my horror, tears sprang to my eyes. Before I could stop myself, I was sobbing. "I'm sorry," I choked out. It's been a really tough week." To my surprise, the client's eyes softened with understanding. "Casey, I run a women's shelter. I know that look. You're not just designing our logo, are you? You're one of us." Her words broke something open inside me. Through my tears, I found myself pouring out the whole story. The affair, the emotional abuse, the custody threats. When I finished, I was sure I'd blown my chance at the job. Instead, the client leaned forward, her voice filled with conviction. "Casey, you're exactly who we need for this project. Your strength, your resilience. That's what our shelter is all about. And I promise you, we'll do everything we can to help you through this." As the call ended, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe I wasn't as alone in this fight as I thought. But as I turned to comfort my worried children, I knew the real battle was just beginning. Everything I loved was at stake, and I had to find the strength to keep fighting, no matter what Rick and Esther threw my way. The weeks following Rick's confrontation were a blur of legal meetings, late nights working on the women's shelter project, and stolen moments of normalcy with Lily and Max. I was running on fumes, but the fire of determination kept me going. Then came the day of the custody hearing. I stood outside the courthouse, my hands shaking as I smoothed down my suit. Tim squeezed my shoulder reassuringly. "You've got this, Casey. Remember, you're fighting for your kids and your future." I nodded, taking a deep breath. As we entered the building, I caught sight of Rick and Esther huddled with their lawyer. Rick's eyes met mine, a mixture of anger and something else, regret, maybe, flashing across his face. The hearing was brutal. Rick's lawyer painted me as an unstable mother who had abandoned her family on a whim. They brought up my fledgling career, our modest apartment, anything to make me look incapable. When it was my turn to speak, I stood tall, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Your Honor, I left an emotionally abusive situation to provide a better life for my children. I'm building a career that allows me to be present for them while also pursuing my passions. My children are thriving in our new environment, free from the constant tension and negativity of their previous home." I glanced at Lily and Max, sitting with Tim in the gallery. Their encouraging smiles gave me strength. I'm not perfect, but I'm doing everything in my power to create a loving, stable home for my children. That's more than I can say for their father, who chose to betray our family and then tried to manipulate the situation to his advantage. The judge listened intently, her expression unreadable. As we awaited her decision, Rick approached me in the hallway. "Casey, please," he pleaded, his voice low. "Let's end this. Come home. We can work it out." I shook my head, my resolve firm. "There's no going back, Rick. You made your choice when you started seeing Jordan." His face darkened. "You don't understand what you're up against. Mom's got friends in high places. We can make your life very difficult." Before I could respond, Lily appeared at my side. "Leave her alone, Dad," she said, her young face set in determination. "We're not coming back. We're happy now." Rick's expression crumpled. "Lily, sweetheart, you don't mean that." "I do," Lily insisted. "Mom's shown us what real strength looks like. You and Grandma just want someone to boss around." Rick opened his mouth to argue, but the bailiff called us back into the courtroom. My heart pounded as the judge began to speak. "After careful consideration, I've decided to grant joint custody to both parents, with primary physical custody going to the mother, Casey Hayward." Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. The judge continued. "However, I'm ordering a 3-month probationary period. During this time, Mrs. Hayward must prove she can provide a stable environment for the children. Any slip-ups, any indication that the children's well-being is at risk, and we'll revisit this decision." As we left the courthouse, my mind raced. 3 months to prove myself. 3 months where one mistake could cost me everything. Tim tried to reassure me. "This is good news, Casey. You've got primary custody. That's huge." But I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. "It's not over, Tim. Rick and Esther won't give up that easily." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My blood ran cold as I read it. "Enjoy your victory while it lasts. We know things about you that would shock the judge. One wrong move, and those kids are coming home where they belong. E." I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. How far would Esther go to get what she wanted? What did she know? As we drove home, Lily's voice broke through my spiraling thoughts. "Mom? Are you okay?" I forced a smile, meeting her eyes in the rearview mirror. "I'm fine, sweetheart. We're going to be just fine." But as I gripped the steering wheel, I knew the real battle was just beginning. Everything I loved was hanging by a thread, and I had no idea how to protect it all from the storm that was coming. The day of the final custody hearing arrived, marking the end of the 3-month probationary period. As I stood before the mirror, adjusting my suit, I caught sight of the woman I'd become. Stronger, more confident, but with shadows under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and constant worry. "Mom?" Lily's voice called from the living room. "It's time to go." I took a deep breath and joined my children. Max clung to my hand as we made our way to the courthouse, his little face a mix of confusion and concern. The courtroom was tense as we entered. Rick and Esther sat on one side, their faces set in grim determination. I felt a flicker of fear as I caught Esther's smug smile. What did she have up her sleeve? As the hearing began, Rick's lawyer presented their case first. To my shock, he called Jordan to the stand. My heart raced as she took her seat, avoiding my gaze. Miss Phillips, the lawyer began, can you tell the court about your relationship with Mr. Hayward? Jordan hesitated, her eyes darting to Rick. We were involved romantically, but it's over now. The lawyer nodded. And during your relationship, did Mr. Hayward ever express concerns about his wife's stability or ability to care for their children? I held my breath, waiting for the blow to fall. But to everyone's surprise, Jordan straightened in her seat, her voice clear and steady. No, she said firmly. Rick never said anything like that. In fact, she paused, taking a deep breath. He often spoke about how Casey was the backbone of their family, how she took care of everything while he focused on his career. A murmur ran through the courtroom. I saw Rick's face pale, while Esther's eyes blazed with fury. When it was my turn to present, I stood tall, my voice unwavering, as I detailed the progress I'd made in the past 3 months, the success of my freelance business, the stable home environment I'd created for the children, and the support system we'd built. Your Honor, I concluded, I'm not perfect. I'm still learning and growing every day. But I'm committed to providing a loving, stable home for my children, a home where they're respected, supported, and free to be themselves. As we awaited the judge's decision, Tim squeezed my hand reassuringly. The tension in the room was palpable. Finally, the judge spoke. After careful consideration of all the evidence presented, I've reached a decision. Full custody of the children will remain with Casey Hayward, with generous visitation rights for Richard Hayward. Relief washed over me. But the judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, she continued, I'm ordering Mr. Hayward and his mother to attend family counseling. It's clear there are deep-seated issues that need to be addressed for the sake of these children. As we left the courthouse, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was over. We'd won. Esther brushed past us, her face twisted with anger. This isn't the end, Casey, she hissed. You'll regret the day you tore this family apart. But her threats held no power over me anymore. I turned to face her, my voice calm but firm. No, Esther, you and Rick tore this family apart long before I left. I'm just putting the pieces back together in a healthier way. To my surprise, Rick approached us, his expression softer than I'd seen in years. Casey, I'm sorry. For everything. You deserved better. I nodded, acknowledging his apology without accepting it fully. We all deserved better, Rick. Maybe now we can all start to heal. As we walked away, Lily slipped her hand into mine. We did it, Mom, she said, her voice filled with pride. We're really free now. That night, as I tucked Max into bed, he looked up at me with wide eyes. Ma, are we going to be okay now? I smiled, kissing his forehead. Yes, sweetheart, we're going to be more than okay. We're going to be happy. Later, as I sat on the balcony of our apartment, I gazed out at the city lights. Tim joined me, handing me a cup of tea. You know, he said softly, you've inspired a lot of people, Casey. The women at the shelter, they look up to you. You've shown them what's possible. I turned to him, feeling a warmth in my chest that had nothing to do with the tea. This isn't just about us, I replied. It's about showing Lily and Max that they deserve respect and love. It's about breaking cycles and building something better. Tim nodded, his eyes shining with admiration. You've shown them, and everyone around you, that quiet strength can lead to powerful changes. As we sat there in comfortable silence, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, I was excited about the future. I had my children, my career, and a chance to help others find their own strength. This wasn't just an ending. It was a new beginning, full of hope and possibility, and I was ready to embrace every moment of it.